We're incredibly grateful for your support. Before we begin today's tale, tell us, which city or country are you joining us from? We love connecting with our global audience. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The cracks begin. Walter Matthews stared at the calendar notification on his phone. 50th birthday, 2 weeks away. He swiped it away with his thumb and continued sorting through his morning emails. The office cubicle felt smaller than usual today. The gentle hum of fluorescent lights overhead, a constant reminder of the 25 years he'd spent in this same spot. Hey, birthday boy. Linda from accounting poked her head over the partition. Any big plans for the big 5-0? Walter managed a polite smile. Just a quiet weekend with the family. Maybe drive up to the lake house. Oh, come on. 50 is huge. You should do something special. The lake house is special, Walter replied, his tone firm enough to end the conversation. Linda shrugged and disappeared behind the partition. The truth was, Walter had been looking forward to a peaceful celebration with Brenda and Tiffany. No fuss, no elaborate parties, just quality time with his two favorite people. But lately, everything felt different. The comfortable silence between him and Brenda had transformed into something heavy, laden with unspoken words and growing resentment. His phone buzzed again. A text from Brenda. Need to discuss wedding expenses. Caterer raised their quote. Call me during lunch. Walter's stomach tightened. He'd been dreading this conversation. The wedding costs had been spiraling out of control, each new expense presented as an absolute necessity. He glanced at his computer screen, where a spreadsheet detailing his retirement savings glowed mockingly. During his lunch break, Walter found a quiet spot in the office courtyard. The call connected after 2 rings. Walter, thank goodness. Brenda's voice carried that familiar note of urgency. The caterer just sent the new quote. They're charging an additional $30 per head for the premium wine selection. Premium wine selection? Walter pinched the bridge of his nose. When did we agree to that? Tiffany and I discussed it last week. The Andersons had premium wine at their daughter's wedding. We can't serve cheaper options than them. The Andersons also have 3 vacation homes, Walter countered. We need to be realistic about our budget. This is our only daughter's wedding. Walter, don't you want it to be perfect? Perfect doesn't have to mean expensive. What about the money we set aside initially? That barely covers the basics. The venue alone. The venue we agreed on 3 months ago was half the price of this new place. Because it was tacky. Do you want Tiffany to be embarrassed on her big day? Walter heard the familiar click of heels in the background. Is that Tiffany? Daddy. His daughter's voice came through, bright and practiced. I'm so glad you called. Mom told me you're worried about the expenses. Princess, we need to be reasonable. Daddy, please. This is the only time I'm getting married. Don't you want to walk me down the aisle in a beautiful venue? With all our friends and family there to celebrate. Walter closed his eyes, fighting the manipulation in her tone. Of course I do, sweetheart. But then what's the problem? It's not like you can't afford it. I saw your retirement account statement when I was helping you organize your office. The statement hit him like a slap. He'd forgotten about that day, when Tiffany had insisted on helping him declutter. Now he wondered if it had been reconnaissance rather than daughter-father bonding. That money is for our future, Tiffany. Your mother and I aren't getting any younger. So your retirement is more important than my happiness? Her voice cracked perfectly. That's not what I have to go. The florist is here. Just think about it, okay? Think about how much this means to me. The line went dead before Walter could respond. He sat there, staring at his phone, feeling the weight of expectations crushing down on him. Later that evening, Walter arrived home to find unfamiliar shoes by the door. Male dress shoes, expensive looking. His heart rate picked up as he heard laughter from the dining room. Walter, Brenda called out. Come meet Richard from the book club. He stopped by to drop off some wedding venue photos. Richard stood as Walter entered, offering a firm handshake and a gleaming smile. He was younger than Walter had expected, maybe early 40s, with carefully styled salt and pepper hair and a tailored blazer that probably cost more than Walter's monthly mortgage payment. The famous Walter, Richard said, his grip lingering a moment too long. Brenda's told us so much about you at the club. Funny, Walter replied, maintaining eye contact. She's never mentioned you. Oh, Walter, Brenda laughed, but there was an edge to it. Richard's been coming to the club for months. Remember? I told you about his amazing presentation on modern literature. Walter didn't remember because she hadn't told him. He was certain of that. Richard's been so helpful with the wedding planning, Brenda continued. He knows the owner of that vineyard we love. The one that's triple our original budget? Walter couldn't keep the bite from his voice. Richard raised his hands in a peacekeeping gesture. Hey, I just make introductions. But I have to say, Brenda's eye for quality is impressive. In my experience, investing in memories is never a waste. And what line of work are you in, Richard? Investment consulting, primarily. But my real passion is helping people realize their dreams. He turned to Brenda with a warm smile. Speaking of which, have you told Walter about your business idea? Walter's head snapped toward his wife. Business idea? Brenda shot Richard a look that spoke volumes. It's just something we've been brainstorming. Nothing concrete yet. Don't be modest, Richard insisted. Your concept for an upscale event planning service is brilliant. With your eye for detail and my business experience, we could. Would anyone like coffee? Brenda interrupted, standing abruptly. I just bought this amazing Brazilian roast. The conversation shifted, but Walter's mind was stuck on that exchange. He watched as Richard and Brenda discussed coffee origins, noting how she leaned forward when Richard spoke, how her laugh seemed lighter, more genuine than it had been with him in months. After Richard left, the tension in the house was palpable. Brenda busied herself with dishes, her movements sharp and agitated. So, event planning? Walter finally asked. It's just an idea. Richard thinks I have potential. Richard seems to think a lot of things. Brenda slammed a plate into the drying rack. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. Just wondering when you started making business plans with a man I've never met. He's from the book club, Walter. You could have met him dozens of times if you ever showed any interest in my activities. How would if you actually told me about them? The sound of a car pulling up interrupted their brewing argument. Moments later, Tiffany burst through the door, wedding magazines tucked under her arm. Mom, you won't believe what Jessica's mother just told me about the catering company we're considering. They did this amazing installation at the Rothschild wedding with ice sculptures, and she trailed off, noticing the tension. What's wrong? Nothing, sweetie. Brenda forced a smile. Your father and I were just discussing the wedding budget. Again, Tiffany's face fell. Daddy, please don't tell me you're still being difficult about this. Walter felt the familiar pressure building behind his eyes. The pressure that came with keeping secrets, with protecting his family from worries they didn't need to face yet. How could he tell them about the rumors of automation at work? About the younger employees being trained on new systems while his department was conspicuously excluded from the updates? I just want what's best for everyone, he said finally. Then prove it, Tiffany challenged. Show us you care about making this special. Walter retreated to his home office, leaving his daughter and wife to their wedding discussions. He opened his laptop, pulling up the email he'd been dreading, a job listing for his position, posted internally just that morning. The description emphasized technological proficiency and adaptability to new systems. His phone buzzed again. A text from Linda, hey, about that birthday weekend. The whole office wants to chip in for a party. Let's do this for you. Walter typed back a firm no, thanks. At least he could control this one thing. One small piece of his life that wasn't spiraling beyond his reach. In bed that night, Walter lay awake, listening to Brenda's steady breathing beside him. She'd gone to sleep without saying goodnight, her back turned to his side of the bed. On his nightstand, a travel brochure for Italy peeked out from under his watch. The dream vacation that came with strings attached, like everything else lately. He thought about his brother Marcus's words from their last lunch. People change, Walt. Sometimes so gradually you don't notice until you wake up next to a stranger. Walter turned to look at his wife's sleeping form, wondering when she had become that stranger, and what other changes he had failed to notice until it was too late. Chapter 2. Whispers and Doubts. The morning sun filtered through the kitchen blinds as Walter prepared his usual breakfast. 2 eggs, wheat toast, black coffee. The routine had been the same for decades, but lately, it felt like going through motions in someone else's life. He checked his watch, 6:45 a.m., exactly when Brenda usually came downstairs for her morning yoga routine. But she didn't come. Walter heard movement upstairs, followed by the muffled sound of Brenda's voice. She was on the phone, speaking in that soft, intimate tone she never used with him anymore. He moved closer to the stairs, his coffee forgotten on the counter. No, he doesn't suspect anything. Brenda's voice drifted down. You know, Walter, he's too wrapped up in his little routines to notice what's right in front of him. A pause, followed by that girlish giggle that made Walter's stomach turn. Richard, stop. You're terrible. Another giggle. No, he's probably eating his sad little breakfast right now. Same thing he's eaten every morning for 20 years. Walter's hands clenched into fists. He wanted to storm upstairs, to confront her, to demand answers. Instead, he forced himself to breathe deeply, to think clearly. Marcus's voice echoed in his head. The moment you show your hand is the moment you lose your advantage. He returned to the kitchen, dumped his untouched coffee in the sink, and left for work earlier than usual. The drive was a blur of familiar streets and automatic turns, his mind replaying that conversation, analyzing every word, every laugh. At the office, he pulled up his calendar, staring at the date he'd been trying to ignore. Their wedding anniversary was tomorrow, and for the first time in 23 years, Brenda hadn't mentioned it once. No hints about gifts, no reminiscing about their wedding day, nothing. He opened his desk drawer, pushing aside papers until his fingers found the velvet box hidden at the back. Inside, the sapphire necklace caught the fluorescent light, sending blue sparkles dancing across his desk. He bought it months ago, planning to surprise her. Now, looking at it made him feel naive. His phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Lunch today? Need to talk to you about something. An hour later, Walter sat across from his brother at their usual diner booth. Marcus looked impeccable in his tailored suit, every inch the successful divorce lawyer he'd become. You look like shit, Marcus said by way of greeting. Thanks. Always good to see you too. Marcus leaned forward, lowering his voice. I've been doing some digging, like you asked, about your friend Richard. Walter's fork paused halfway to his mouth. And he's not what he seems, Walt. The investment firm he claims to work for? They've never heard of him. His social media presence? Created 6 months ago. All of it. 6 months, Walter repeated, right when Brenda started attending that book club, which, by the way, has no record of him as a member. Marcus pulled out his phone, scrolling through notes. But here's where it gets interesting. I found 3 different women in the past 2 years who filed complaints against a Richard Morton. Different last name, same MO, gets close to wealthy, married women, convinces them to invest in his business ventures, then disappears with their money. Walter set down his fork, his appetite gone. Does Brenda know? Would it matter if she did? Marcus's expression softened slightly. Walt, you need to protect yourself. I've seen this story too many times. By the time people come to me, it's usually too late. What are you suggesting? Start documenting everything. Phone records, bank statements, any evidence of their relationship. And for God's sake, don't confront her yet. The moment you do, evidence starts disappearing. Walter nodded slowly, remembering the phone conversation he'd overheard that morning. She's planning something with him. A business venture. Classic move. He'll convince her to invest your savings, promising huge returns. Marcus pulled out a business card, sliding it across the table. This is Anya Petrov, best private investigator I know. She's discreet, thorough, and most importantly, she knows how to build a case that holds up in court. Walter stared at the card, the glossy black text seeming to mock him. I never thought I'd need something like this. Nobody does, brother. Nobody does. That evening, Walter sat his parked car outside their house, watching Brenda through the living room window. She was on the phone again, pacing in that animated way she had when she was excited about something. He pulled out his own phone, dialing the number on Anya's card. A smooth, professional voice answered on the second ring. Petrov Consulting. Ms. Petrov, Marcus Matthews gave me your number. I need your help. Mr. Matthews. Your brother mentioned you might call. Where would you like to meet? As soon as possible. There's a coffee shop on 4th Street. Tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. Walter glanced at his watch, their anniversary. Perfect. The next morning, Walter met Anya Petrov. She was younger than he expected, maybe mid-30s, with sharp features and calculating eyes that missed nothing. She listened without interruption as Walter explained the situation, occasionally making notes in a small black notebook. "Your brother mentioned the book club angle," she said when he finished. "That's where I'll start. These groups often keep detailed attendance records, and if your wife's friend isn't actually a member—" "I need to know everything," Walter interrupted. "Where they meet, what they discuss, if they're planning something with my money." Anya nodded, closing her notebook. "I should have preliminary findings within a week. But Mr. Matthews, I need you to understand something. Once we start this investigation, there's no going back. Are you prepared for what we might find?" Walter thought about the sapphire necklace still hidden in his desk drawer, about the anniversary Brenda hadn't mentioned, about that girlish laugh that wasn't meant for him. "Yes," he said firmly. "I'm prepared." The day passed in a blur of meetings and paperwork. Walter waited for some sign that Brenda remembered the significance of the date, a text, a call, anything. Nothing came. He arrived home late, telling himself he wasn't avoiding the empty house. Brenda was in the kitchen, typing on her laptop. "You're late," she said without looking up. "Had some work to finish." He hesitated, then added, "Do you know what today is?" She glanced at her screen. Thursday. The casual dismissal of 23 years of marriage hit harder than any accusation could have. Walter went upstairs without another word, the weight of the unused anniversary card in his pocket seeming to grow with each step. In their bedroom, he noticed small changes he'd been blind to before. The new perfume bottle on her dresser, not the scent he'd given her last Christmas. The gym bag packed by the door, though she hadn't mentioned any exercise plans. The slightly worn spot on her side of the mattress, as if she'd been sitting there, talking on the phone for hours. His phone buzzed with a text from Tiffany. "Girls' trip this weekend. Mom's so excited." Walter frowned at the message. This was the first he'd heard of any trip. He opened his laptop and logged into their shared credit card account, a habit he'd developed since hiring Anya. There was a hotel reservation in Chicago, the same city where Richard had mentioned he'd be attending a business conference. He took a deep breath, documenting the reservation details in a secure folder he'd created. Each new piece of evidence felt like another nail in the coffin of his marriage. Chapter 3. The Breaking Point. The morning of the road trip dawned with an atmosphere of forced cheerfulness. Brenda had insisted they all drive together to visit Tiffany's wedding venue, claiming it would be a good opportunity for family bonding. Walter knew better. This was another attempt to pressure him about the wedding expenses. "Did you pack the venue contracts?" Brenda called from the kitchen as Walter loaded their overnight bags into the car. "They're in my briefcase," he replied, careful to keep his tone neutral. He'd spent the previous night reviewing those contracts, noting how the costs had mysteriously inflated since their initial discussions. Tiffany bounded down the front steps, her handbag swinging. "Daddy, can we stop for breakfast at that cute diner? The one with the amazing waffles." "Princess, that's an hour in the wrong direction. Please?" "For me." She batted her eyelashes, a move that had worked countless times before. "I want this trip to be special." Walter saw through the manipulation now, recognized it for what it was. Still, he nodded, playing his part. "Whatever you want, sweetheart." The first hour of the drive passed in uncomfortable silence, broken only by Brenda's occasional sighs and Tiffany's texting notifications. Walter kept his eyes on the road, mentally reviewing his contingency plans. At the diner, Brenda waited until Walter had taken his first bite of eggs before launching her offensive. "So, I've been thinking about what you said about the wedding budget," she began, stirring her coffee with practiced nonchalance. "And I realize we need to have a serious discussion about priorities." Walter set down his fork. "I thought I was clear about my position." "Your position?" Brenda's voice rose slightly. "You mean your stubborn refusal to give our daughter the wedding she deserves?" "Mom's right," Tiffany chimed in right on cue. "All my friends are having amazing weddings. The Hendersons flew in a celebrity chef for their daughter's reception." "We're not the Hendersons," Walter replied firmly. "And throwing money at a one-day event won't make you happier in the long run." "How would you know what makes me happy?" Tiffany snapped. You're never around anymore, always working late or hiding in your office. I'm working to provide for this family. Walter felt his control slipping. To build a secure future. Future? Brenda interrupted. What about the present? What about Tiffany's dreams? What about my dreams? Your dreams? Walter couldn't help the bitter laugh. Like the business venture you're planning with Richard? The silence that followed was deafening. Brenda's face went pale, then flushed with anger. You've been spying on me? I've been paying attention. Finally. How dare you? Brenda's voice shook. After all these years, you don't trust me? Trust works both ways, Brenda. When were you planning to tell me about the business? Or about the Chicago trip that happens to coincide with Richard's conference? Tiffany gasped, looking between her parents with wide eyes. Mom, don't act innocent, Tiffany. Walter turned to his daughter. You've been helping her hide it, haven't you? All those girls' nights and book club meetings? I just wanted Mom to be happy, Tiffany stammered. You've been so distant lately, so focused on your precious savings. My savings that you both seem to think you're entitled to, Walter cut in. Did Richard promise you a share of the profits too? Did he tell you about his track record with other women's money? Brenda's hand slammed down on the table, rattling the plates. That's enough. I won't sit here and listen to these accusations. She stood abruptly, grabbing her purse. We're leaving. Now. The drive resumed in icy silence. Walter could see Brenda texting furiously in the passenger seat, while Tiffany sniffled dramatically in the back. He knew what was coming, had prepared for it, in fact. An hour later, Brenda suddenly spoke. Pull over. We're in the middle of nowhere, Walter observed. Pull over. Walter complied, guiding the car onto the shoulder of the deserted highway. Before he could speak, Brenda turned to him, her face hard with anger. Get out. Excuse me? You heard me. Get out of the car. If you don't trust me, if you think I'm some kind of criminal conspiring with Richard, then you can figure out your own way home. Mom's right. Tiffany chimed in from the back seat. Figure out how to get home on your own, loser. Walter looked between them, his wife of 23 years and the daughter he devoted his life to. In their faces, he saw only entitlement and contempt. Any lingering doubt about his plans vanished in that moment. Wordlessly, he stepped out of the car. Brenda immediately slid into the driver's seat, and with a spray of gravel, they were gone, leaving him alone on the side of the highway. Or not quite alone. Walter pulled out his phone and dialed a number he'd memorized. Miss Petrov? It's time. Within minutes, a sleek black car appeared on the horizon. As it pulled up beside him, Walter caught his reflection in the tinted windows and was surprised to see himself smiling. Anya Petrov opened the passenger door, her professional demeanor tinged with something like admiration. Right on schedule, Mr. Matthews. They performed exactly as you predicted. People are predictable when they think they're in control, Walter replied, settling into the leather seat. What did you find out about Richard's latest investment scheme? Everything, Anya said, pulling back onto the highway. And I mean everything. Would you like to hear about his other aliases first, or should we start with the offshore accounts? As they drove away, Walter felt no regret, no hesitation. Brenda and Tiffany had made their choice, drawn their lines in the sand. Now, it was his turn to draw some lines of his own, and he had all the time in the world to make them perfect. Chapter 4. Unveiling the Truth. Anya Petrov's office reflected its owner's personality, organized, precise, and revealing nothing by accident. She spread a series of documents across her desk as Walter leaned forward in his chair, absorbing each detail. Richard Morton, also known as Richard Preston, Richard Collins, and most recently, Richard Spencer, Anya began, tapping a photograph of Richard at what appeared to be a charity gala. He's quite the chameleon. Walter picked up the photo, studying the familiar face that had invaded his home. Tell me everything. Born Richard Morton in 1978, changed his name for the first time in 2015 after 3 women filed complaints about investment fraud. He's got a pattern. Joins social clubs, particularly book clubs, targeting wealthy married women. He's never actually read the books. He memorizes summaries from the internet. Walter's jaw tightened. The investment schemes? All variations on the same con. He convinces women to invest in non-existent business ventures, usually promising returns of 200% or more. The money disappears into offshore accounts. Anya pulled out another document. Here's the interesting part. He's currently being investigated by the SEC, but they haven't moved on him yet. They can't prove he's behind the shell companies. And his current financial situation? He's drowning in debt, credit cards maxed out, living in a rented apartment while pretending to own a penthouse. The expensive clothes? All bought on credit. He's desperate for a big score. Anya's eyes met Walter's. And I believe your wife is his intended target. Walter nodded slowly, pieces falling into place. The event planning business they've been discussing. Exactly. Based on the conversations we've recorded, he's planning to convince her to invest at least $500,000. Your retirement savings. Walter stood, walking to the window. Below, people hurried along the street, unaware of the schemes and betrayals playing out in the offices above them. What about his previous victims? Anya pulled out 3 more files. I tracked down all of them. Patricia Henderson lost $300,000 in a boutique hotel venture. Margaret Wilson, $425,000 in a premium wine import scheme. And Sarah Collins, nearly $600,000 in an exclusive spa resort project. She paused. Would you like to speak with them? No, Walter replied, turning back to face her. But I want their contact information, and I want you to arrange meetings between them and certain members of Brenda's social circle. Make it seem coincidental. Anya's lips curved in understanding, planting seeds of doubt. Exactly. Richard's carefully constructed image needs to develop some cracks. Natural ones, nothing too obvious. And the photos I took of them together? Hold those for now. We'll use them when the time is right. Walter returned to his seat, picking up another document. Tell me about his daily routine. I want to know everything. Where he goes, who he meets, what he eats for breakfast. For the next hour, they methodically reviewed Richard's life, identifying vulnerabilities and pressure points. Walter absorbed each detail, his mind already constructing elaborate scenarios, calculating moves and countermoves like a chess master. There's one more thing, Anya said, pulling out a final folder. We found his connection to the travel company that offered your wife the Italy trip deal. It's another of his schemes. The company doesn't actually own any properties in Italy. They collect deposits for timeshare presentations, then disappear. Walter's expression darkened. He wasn't content just trying to steal my money. He had to take my birthday, too. The good news is we can use this. The company's barely legitimate. One complaint to the right authorities could bring the whole thing down. Not yet, Walter decided. Let's wait until Brenda's more invested in the idea. Let her spend time planning the trip, choosing restaurants, picking out clothes. The disappointment will be greater. Anya studied him with newfound respect. You're not just looking for revenge. You're orchestrating a symphony of disappointments. They chose to treat my life, my feelings, my dedication as worthless, Walter replied, his voice calm but cold. Now, they'll learn the true value of what they've thrown away. Later that evening, Walter sat in his home office, reviewing his notes. His phone buzzed. A text from Linda at work. You okay? Brenda called the office looking for you. Seemed upset. He smiled slightly, imagining Brenda's frustration when she couldn't track him down. His response was carefully crafted. Thanks for checking. Just taking some personal time to think things through. Let her wonder. Let her worry. The uncertainty would drive her straight to Richard, pushing her to make mistakes. His computer pinged with an email notification from Anya. She'd made contact with Sarah Collins, Richard's most recent victim. Sarah had agreed to accidentally run into one of Brenda's closest friends at their favorite coffee shop tomorrow morning. Walter opened his planning document, adding another note. Track Brenda's reaction when her friend mentions meeting Sarah. Look for signs of doubt. The game was in motion. Each piece was being positioned carefully, deliberately. Richard had spent months weaving his web around Brenda. Now Walter would spend months watching that web unravel, strand by strand. He picked up his phone again, scrolling through his contact list until he found a number for Claire Morrison, the head of the hospital charity board where Brenda volunteered. Time to express some concerns about the upcoming fundraiser's financial management. Chapter 5. Tightening the Screws. The changes started small, almost imperceptible. A whispered conversation between two of Brenda's friends that stopped abruptly when she approached. A slight hesitation from the wedding florist when discussing payment terms. Richard's calls taking longer to be returned. Walter watched it all through Anya's detailed reports, savoring each tiny crack in their confidence. Mrs. Henderson made contact today, Anya reported during their weekly meeting. She happened to mention Richard's wine import scheme to Brenda's tennis partner. And the tennis partner immediately called two other women from their social circle. They spent 45 minutes discussing Richard's recent purchases and wondering about his source of income. Walter nodded approvingly. How's Richard handling the pressure? Not well. His credit card was declined at dinner last night, in front of Brenda. He played it off as a bank error, but we made sure the maitre d' was quite vocal about the rejection. The pressure was building from other directions, too. Walter had anonymously tipped off several wedding vendors about concerning financial issues with the Matthews wedding. Now, they were demanding larger deposits and stricter payment terms. Dad, Tiffany's voice carried through his phone speaker, tight with stress. The florist wants the entire payment up front now. Mom says you're behind this somehow. Behind what, princess? I'm not involved in the wedding planning. Remember? You and your mother made that very clear. But they never required full payment before. And the caterer's asking for a non-refundable deposit, and the photographer wants. Sounds like they're just being prudent business people. Walter interrupted smoothly. Perhaps they've had issues with other clients recently. Mom's freaking out. She says she'll have to dip into her savings, but what? She says they're tied up in some investment thing with Richard. Something about an event planning business. Walter allowed concern to color his voice. An investment? Has she seen the business plan? The financial projections? I don't know. Dad, you don't think. I'm sure your mother knows what she's doing, sweetheart. She and Richard seem very close. The seeds of doubt were planted. Walter could hear it in Tiffany's voice, the first hint of uncertainty about her mother's judgment. Later that week, Walter's phone rang again. This time, it was Claire Morrison. Walter, we need to talk about Brenda's position on the charity board. Is something wrong? There are concerns about her relationship with one of our donors. Richard Spencer? He made some promises about major donations that haven't materialized, and now there are questions about their personal involvement. I see, Walter replied, his tone carefully neutral. That must be uncomfortable for everyone. The board is meeting next week to discuss it. I thought you should know. After hanging up, Walter opened his laptop and typed a brief email to Anya. Phase 2 complete. Begin Phase 3. Phase 3 was perhaps the most delicate part of their plan. Over the next few days, carefully selected photos of Brenda and Richard would find their way to her employer. Nothing explicit, nothing that couldn't be explained away, but enough to raise questions about professional boundaries and potential conflicts of interest. The response was swift. Brenda stormed into the house one evening, face flushed with anger and humiliation. They suspended me, pending an investigation into inappropriate business relationships. This is your doing, isn't it? Walter looked up from his newspaper, the picture of innocence. I have no idea what you're talking about, though I did hear some rumors about Richard's business practices. What rumors? What have you been saying about it? Me? Nothing. But it seems some of his former business partners have been quite vocal about their experiences. Brenda's face paled slightly. Former partners? Apparently there are quite a few of them, but I'm sure he's explained all that to you. After all, you're investing your savings with him, aren't you? The uncertainty in her eyes was beautiful to behold. Walter watched as she pulled out her phone, fingers trembling slightly as she dialed Richard's number. It went straight to voicemail. He's probably in a meeting, she muttered, but her voice lacked conviction. Probably, Walter agreed mildly, though I heard his phone was disconnected. Something about unpaid bills? But that can't be right, not with all his successful investments. Brenda fled upstairs, and moments later, Walter heard her voice, sharp with panic, leaving another message for Richard. His phone buzzed with a text from Anya. Richard spotted at airport. Buying ticket to Chicago. Walter smiled and typed back, Let him run. That's part of the plan, too. The next morning, Tiffany arrived unannounced, her handbag replaced with a simple purse, her face stripped of its usual perfect makeup. Dad, we need to talk. About Mom. About Richard. About everything. Walter gestured to the chair across from him. I'm listening, princess. The wedding vendors, they're not just being difficult. They're pulling out completely. They say they received anonymous proof that we can't pay. Anonymous proof? Bank statements, investment records. Dad, what did Mom do with her money? With your money? Walter leaned back, letting the silence stretch. Finally, he spoke softly. Perhaps you should ask Richard. Oh, wait, no one can reach him, can they? Tiffany's face crumpled. How could she be so stupid? How could I be so stupid? All those times he talked about exclusive deals and guaranteed returns. People believe what they want to believe, sweetheart. Your mother wanted to believe she could have everything. The perfect wedding for you, a successful business, a wealthy new partner. Partner? Mom said they were just friends. Walter slid a folder across the desk, one of many Anya had prepared. Maybe you should look at these. Bank transfers, hotel receipts, photographs. As Tiffany read, her face went through a range of emotions, shock, disgust, fury. When she looked up, her eyes were hard. I want to help you destroy them. Walter studied his daughter, seeing a reflection of his own cold determination in her face. Are you sure? This is your mother we're talking about. She's not just ruining her own life. She's ruining mine too. My wedding is a disaster. My friends are whispering behind my back. And now I find out she's been lying to everyone. If you help me, Walter said carefully, there's no going back. The consequences will be severe. Tiffany straightened in her chair. Good. Chapter 6, The Fall from Grace. The evidence was overwhelming, meticulously gathered and precisely timed. Walter reviewed it one final time before giving Anya the signal to proceed. First came the photos, nothing scandalous, but compromising enough. Brenda and Richard in intimate conversation at various restaurants, entering and leaving hotels, exchanging what appeared to be business documents but were actually blank papers, a touch Anya had suggested for plausible deniability. These went to local news outlets, accompanied by detailed documentation of Richard's fraudulent business practices. The story broke on a Tuesday morning. Local businessman accused of multiple investment scams. Brenda's name wasn't mentioned in the first articles, but her photo appeared prominently. By Wednesday, she was being named as a person of interest in Richard's schemes. The social media response was immediate and brutal. Walter watched as Brenda's carefully curated online presence crumbled under an avalanche of accusations and innuendo. They're calling me a con artist's accomplice, she screamed at him across the kitchen. My friends won't take my calls. The charity board has asked for my resignation. How are you so calm about this? Should I be upset? Walter asked mildly. About my wife being involved with a known fraudster? About our savings being invested in fake businesses? About our daughter's wedding being ruined because of your poor choices? I didn't know. Richard said exactly what you wanted to hear. And you believed him because it was easier than facing reality. The wedding fell apart spectacularly. Vendors publicly withdrew, citing ethical concerns about being associated with the scandal. Guests sent regrets, each decline another nail in the coffin of Brenda's social standing. Tiffany, playing her part perfectly, had a very public meltdown at what was supposed to be her final dress fitting. You've ruined everything, she shouted at Brenda in the crowded bridal salon. My wedding is a joke. My friends are embarrassed to be seen with me. And it's all because you couldn't keep your hands off that lying snake. The video, captured by another customer and posted online, went viral in their social circle. Richard, true to form, had vanished completely. His phone was disconnected, his apartment emptied, his social media deleted. But Walter had anticipated this too. The police would like to speak with you, he informed Brenda one morning, sliding a business card across the table. Apparently, Richard's other victims have filed charges. They seem to think you might have been involved in his schemes. I wasn't involved. I'm a victim too. Are you? The money transfers suggest otherwise. The business documents with your signature. The joint bank account. Brenda's face went white. How do you know about those? I know everything, Brenda. I've known for months. I watched you dig yourself deeper and deeper, and I did nothing to stop it. Do you know why? She stared at him, realization dawning in her eyes. You planned this? I planned nothing. I merely observed and documented. You and Richard did all the work yourselves. The divorce papers were delivered the next day. Walter's lawyers had prepared an airtight case, backed by overwhelming evidence of infidelity and financial misconduct. You'll get nothing, his lawyer assured him. The documentation of her affair and involvement in Richard's schemes negates any claim she might have had to your assets. Brenda, desperate and isolated, tried one final gambit. She showed up at Walter's office, tears streaming down her face. Please, she begged. I'll lose everything. My reputation, my friends, my daughter. I'll be ruined. Walter looked at her, remembering the woman who had ordered him out of the car, who had conspired with Richard to steal his savings, who had turned their daughter against him. Yes, he said simply. You will. As security escorted her out, Walter turned back to his computer. He had one final task to complete, an anonymous tip to the FBI about Richard's whereabouts. Let them deal with him now. The game was over. Walter had won, thoroughly and completely. Yet as he sat in his empty house that night, the victory felt strangely hollow. He picked up his phone, scrolling through old family photos, happier times that now seemed like scenes from someone else's life. A text from Tiffany lit up his screen. Thank you for showing me the truth, Dad. Can we meet tomorrow? I need your advice about what to do next. Walter placed his phone down, contemplating his daughter's message. She'd proven to be an unexpected ally in this calculated game, her anger at her mother's betrayal transforming her from a spoiled princess into a determined player in his revenge plot. His phone rang again, Anya this time. Mr. Matthews, we've located Richard, she reported. He's attempting to establish a new identity in Chicago. Should we proceed with the final phase? Yes, Walter confirmed. Make sure all evidence reaches the proper authorities. Tax records, bank transfers, everything. And the compromising photos of him and Brenda? Release those to his other victims first. Let them be the ones to take it public. More impact that way. The next morning's news painted a devastating picture. Richard's face splashed across local websites, accompanied by headlines detailing his history of fraud. Interviews with previous victims portrayed him as a calculating predator who targeted vulnerable women. Brenda's name appeared prominently in several articles, her involvement painted in the worst possible light. Walter's office phone buzzed. His secretary's voice was apologetic. Sir, Mrs. Matthews is here again. She's quite insistent about seeing you. Call security, he replied calmly. And Jennifer? Forward all recordings of her attempts to contact me to my lawyer. The systematic dismantling of Brenda's life continued. The charity board publicly distanced themselves from her. The exclusive country club suspended her membership pending investigation. Her social media accounts became battlegrounds of accusation and recrimination. Walter observed it all from a careful distance, neither participating nor intervening. He'd set the machinery in motion. Now he merely watched it work. A week later, he met Tiffany at a quiet cafe across town. His daughter had changed, the clothes replaced by simple business attire, her manner more subdued. Mom tried to access your retirement accounts yesterday, she informed him, stirring her coffee absently. The bank called me because I'm still listed as a contact. I know. The attempt was logged and forwarded to my lawyer. She's desperate. All her friends have abandoned her. The wedding is officially canceled. I sent out the notifications this morning. Walter studied his daughter's face. Any regrets? About the wedding? No. About trusting Mom and Richard? Many. She met his eyes. About helping you expose them? None. Their conversation was interrupted by breaking news alerts on both their phones. Richard had been arrested in Chicago, attempting to board a flight to Mexico. The FBI had been waiting. Your work? Tiffany asked. Walter nodded. The evidence was overwhelming. Tax evasion, wire fraud, multiple counts of investment fraud. He'll be in prison for a very long time. And Mom, the authorities have all the evidence of her involvement. What happens next is up to them. Later that evening, Walter sat in his study, reviewing the final pieces of his plan. The divorce proceedings were moving forward rapidly, his lawyers armed with irrefutable evidence of Brenda's infidelity and financial misconduct. The judge had already frozen all joint accounts, and preliminary rulings favored Walter's claims to their assets. Anya's final report lay on his desk, detailing the complete implosion of Richard's schemes and Brenda's reputation. Everything had played out exactly as planned, each piece falling precisely into place. His revenge was complete. Through careful manipulation and strategic patience, he had orchestrated their downfall without ever getting his hands dirty. Richard faced years in prison. Brenda had lost everything: her social standing, her daughter's respect, her financial security. Their carefully constructed world of lies and manipulation had crumbled, leaving them with nothing but the consequences of their choices. Walter closed the file and poured himself a small measure of scotch. The game was over, and he had won. Yet as he sat in the growing darkness of his study, he felt no triumph, no satisfaction, only a cold, empty certainty that justice had been served. His phone buzzed one final time. Another message from Anya. Surveillance discontinued as requested. All evidence archived. It's done, Mr. Matthews. Yes, Walter thought, setting down his glass. It was done. The calculated game had played out to its inevitable conclusion, leaving destruction in its wake. Now it was time to move forward, leaving the ruins of his old life behind. He typed a brief response to Anya. Thank you for your services. Closed the file. The end of Act 2 marked not just the completion of his revenge, but the final dismantling of a life he'd built over 23 years. He had orchestrated their fall from grace, watching as their world collapsed piece by carefully arranged piece. In the end, it wasn't the dramatic confrontations or public scandals that gave him satisfaction. It was the knowledge that they had destroyed themselves through their own greed and arrogance. He had merely provided the stage and waited for the inevitable performance. Walter stood at his study window, looking out at the neighborhood where he'd spent so many years building a life that now lay in ruins. The game was over, the calculation complete, the price of victory yet to be determined. Chapter 7. The Aftermath. Walter sat alone in his study, surrounded by the evidence of his successful revenge. News articles about Richard's arrest, legal documents from the divorce proceedings, and surveillance photos covered his desk. Each piece represented a victory, yet something felt hollow in his chest. His phone buzzed. Another message from Tiffany. Dad, can we talk? I've been thinking about everything that happened. He stared at the message, remembering her cruel words on that fateful day by the roadside. The daughter who had called him a loser now wanted to talk. His finger hovered over the delete button, but something stopped him. Come over for dinner, he typed back. Tiffany arrived, looking different from the entitled princess she'd been just months ago. Her clothes were replaced by simple jeans and a sweater, her face free of makeup, her expression uncertain. I brought wine, she said, holding up a modestly priced bottle. Nothing fancy, but I thought. It's perfect, Walter replied, noting how she seemed to shrink into herself, so different from her former confident swagger. They sat at the kitchen table, the same one where family dinners had once been filled with laughter and conversation. Now it felt too large for just the two of them. I've been seeing a therapist, Tiffany blurted out, staring into her wine glass. After everything that happened, I needed to understand why I became such a horrible person. Walter watched her carefully. And what did you understand? That I was spoiled, entitled. Mom always taught me to demand the best, to never settle, but she never taught me about earning things or respecting others. She looked up, tears in her eyes. I'm so sorry, Dad. The way I treated you, the things I said. You chose your side, Walter said quietly. I chose wrong. I was blind, stupid, caught up in this fantasy of a perfect wedding and a perfect life. When it all fell apart, when I saw what Mom and Richard really were. She wiped her eyes. I realized I'd become just like them. Walter felt something crack in his carefully maintained wall of anger. And now I'm trying to be better. I got a job, a real one, not the vanity position Mom's friend arranged. I'm working as an assistant at a nonprofit. The pay is terrible, but the work matters. Walter poured more wine, considering her words. His revenge had been perfect, calculated to destroy Brenda and Richard completely. But he hadn't anticipated this, his daughter's genuine remorse, her attempt at redemption. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Tiffany continued. I don't deserve it yet, but I want you to know that I understand now. About the money, about your concerns, about everything. You were right. Walter stood, walking to the window. Behind him, he heard Tiffany's quiet sniffles. I look at myself in the mirror, she said softly, and I don't recognize who I was. That entitled brat who cared more about an expensive wedding than her father's feelings. I hate her. Hate doesn't solve anything, Walter replied, surprising himself with the words. Trust me, I know. What do you mean? He turned back to face her. My revenge was perfect. I destroyed your mother's life, exposed Richard for what he was, dismantled everything they built. But sitting here now, he gestured at the empty house. What did I really win? Justice, Tiffany offered. Justice. Walter laughed without humor. Or did I just become as calculating and cold as they were? They sat in silence, letting the questions hang between them. Finally, Tiffany spoke again. The nonprofit where I work. We're organizing a fundraiser for homeless youth. Would you like to help? They need volunteers with financial experience. Walter studied his daughter's face, seeing genuine hope there. I'll think about it. After Tiffany left, Walter found himself looking through old family photos. Pictures of Tiffany's childhood, birthday parties, school plays, family vacations. The smiles had been real then, the love genuine. When had it all gone wrong? His phone rang. Marcus, his brother. Heard you had dinner with Tiffany, Marcus said without preamble. News travels fast. In this family? Always. Listen, Walt, be careful. People don't change overnight. She seems different. They always do when they need something. Just remember how she treated you before. Walter sighed. You sound cynical, Marcus. I sound experienced. I've seen too many reconciliations turn into renewed manipulations. After hanging up, Walter sat in his darkened study, thinking about satisfaction and emptiness, revenge and redemption. His plan had worked perfectly, so why did victory taste like ashes? A new email notification popped up on his computer, a message from the nonprofit where Tiffany worked, acknowledging his offer to volunteer. He didn't remember making the offer, but somehow his fingers had typed out the response. Maybe, he thought, this was the real test. Not how well he could destroy lives, but whether he could help rebuild them. Chapter 8. Moving on. The community center buzzed with activity as Walter helped set up for the fundraising event. 2 months had passed since his dinner with Tiffany, and somehow he'd been drawn into more than just financial consulting. Mr. Matthews, a voice called out, could you help with these tables? The speaker was Olivia Chun, the center's social work coordinator. She stood amid a chaos of folding tables and chairs, her practical business suit somehow untouched by the disorder around her. Of course, Walter replied, noting how her presence seemed to organize the chaos naturally. As they arranged the furniture, Olivia spoke about the center's latest initiatives. Her passion for the work was evident in every word, her focus always on practical solutions rather than mere sympathy. You've been a tremendous help with the budget restructuring, she said as they finished. Most volunteers just want to do the visible work, but you understand that good administration saves more lives than dramatic gestures. I appreciate efficiency, Walter replied. So I've noticed. She gave him a knowing look. Your daughter told me about your background in finance. She didn't mention you were also an expert in strategic planning. Walter froze slightly. Did she tell you anything else? About the divorce? The scandal? It's a small community, Mr. Matthews. People talk. Olivia straightened a chair precisely. But I prefer to judge people by their actions in the present, not their history. Before Walter could respond, Tiffany hurried over with a stack of programs. Dad, the printer messed up the donor acknowledgments. Could you help me sort this out? Walter noticed how naturally Tiffany had adapted to her role at the center. She moved with purpose now, her handbag replaced by a practical tote filled with work documents. Later that evening, after the event's success, Walter found himself sharing coffee with Olivia in her office. "Your daughter's transformed," she observed. "When she first started here, I thought she was just another rich girl playing a charity. But she's proven me wrong. She's trying to change," Walter acknowledged. "And you? Are you just here to support her transformation? Or are you looking for something too?" Walter considered the question. "I achieved everything I set out to do in my previous project. It was perfect, precise, exactly what I wanted. But perfect revenge feels different from perfect justice." Olivia nodded slowly. "You know, we see a lot of people here seeking redemption. Some are running from their past, others trying to atone for it. The ones who succeed are those who realize that moving forward isn't about erasing the past. It's about building something new on top of it." Their conversation was interrupted by a commotion outside. Walter recognized Brenda's voice, shrill with desperation. "I need to see my daughter. Tiffany, please." Walter moved to the door, but Olivia held up a hand. "Wait, watch." Through the office window, they saw Tiffany confront her mother. Brenda looked diminished, her expensive clothes replaced by off-the-rack alternatives, her confident posture now uncertain. "Mom, you can't just show up here. I'm working." "Working? In this place? Come home, sweetheart. I found a new apartment. We can start over, away from all this." "This is my life now," Tiffany replied firmly. "I'm not going back to being that person." "What person? Your real self? Not this charity worker pretending to care about strangers." "I do care. That's the difference, Mom. I finally learned to care about something beyond myself, beyond appearances and status and what other people think." Walter watched the exchange, seeing both the echo of the past and the shadow of the future in their confrontation. "You sound like your father," Brenda spat. "All high and mighty, judging me for wanting a better life." "No, Mom. Dad wanted a real life. You wanted performance." Tiffany's voice softened. "I hope you find peace somewhere, but I can't help you look for it." As Brenda left, Walter felt Olivia's presence beside him. "Your daughter's quite strong," she observed. "She is. Stronger than I gave her credit for. Sometimes people surprise us. Sometimes we surprise ourselves." That night, driving home, Walter took a different route, one that passed his old house. Brenda had been forced to sell it in the divorce settlement. New owners had painted it a different color, planted different flowers. The physical reminder of his old life transformed into something unrecognizable. Yet somehow, the sight didn't pain him as it once had. Perhaps because he too was becoming something different, something unrecognizable to his past self. His phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. "Committee meeting tomorrow at 9. Bring your analysis of the youth program funding. And maybe coffee." Walter smiled, realizing that for the first time in months, he was looking forward to tomorrow. Chapter 9. The Price of Forgiveness? The hospital corridor stretched before Walter, each step feeling heavier than the last. Tiffany's voice echoed in his mind, her phone call from 2 days ago replaying like a loop. "Mom's sick, Dad. Really sick. No insurance, no savings, the doctors say, without treatment." She hadn't finished the sentence. She hadn't needed to. Now he stood outside room 412, where Brenda lay waiting for test results that would determine her future. Their divorce had been finalized 6 months ago, his revenge complete and devastating. He hadn't expected to see her again, certainly not like this. "Mr. Matthews?" A nurse approached. "She's awake if you want to go in." Walter nodded, steeling himself. He pushed open the door. Brenda lay in the hospital bed, looking small and pale against the white sheets. The sophisticated woman who had once dominated their social circle was gone, replaced by someone who seemed to have aged years and months. "Walter," her voice was barely a whisper. "Why are you here?" "Tiffany called me." Of course she did. Brenda tried to smile, but managed only a grimace. "Come to see your revenge reach its final stage. Is that what you think this is? Isn't it? I lost everything. My friends, my reputation, my future. Now I'm losing my health too. You must be satisfied." Walter sat in the visitor's chair, studying the woman he'd once loved, then hated now. "What?" "The doctors say without treatment." She paused, gathering strength. "Well, you can guess. And insurance won't cover experimental procedures. Funny, isn't it? I used to waste money on handbags, and now I can't afford to save my own life. Mom. Tiffany stood in the doorway, looking between her parents uncertainly. She carried a paper cup of coffee that must have been for Brenda. I'll leave you two alone, Walter said, standing. In the hospital cafeteria, he found Olivia waiting. She'd insisted on coming with him, though she'd given him space for the actual visit. How bad is it? She asked as he sat down. Bad. The treatment she needs, it's expensive. Experimental. No insurance coverage. Olivia reached across the table, taking his hand. And what are you thinking? I'm thinking about revenge and justice and forgiveness. He squeezed her hand. I'm thinking about how perfect vengeance felt empty, but imperfect mercy might feel right. You're considering helping her. Is that weakness? I think, Olivia said carefully, that strength isn't just about winning. Sometimes it's about choosing not to deliver the final blow, even when you could. Walter pulled out his phone, pulling up his banking app. The numbers on the screen represented the fruits of his careful financial planning, his protected retirement, his secure future. The treatment costs almost exactly what I refused to spend on Tiffany's wedding, he noted with ironic amusement. Life has a way of offering symmetry, Olivia observed. The question is whether we recognize it as an opportunity for closure or another chance for conflict. They sat in companionable silence as Walter wrestled with his decision. Finally, he made a call to his bank. Later that evening, as he and Olivia walked through the hospital parking lot, Tiffany ran to catch them. Dad, the hospital, they just got notification of payment for Mom's treatment. Anonymous, they said, but Walter kept walking, not acknowledging her words. Why? Tiffany asked, falling in a step beside them. After everything she did, because carrying revenge is heavier than carrying forgiveness, he replied. And because sometimes being right matters less than being at peace. Tiffany wiped her eyes. I don't know if I could do that. You already did, Olivia pointed out. You chose forgiveness when you decided to change your life instead of blaming others for it. They reached their cars, the hospital lights painting shadows around them. Walter looked back at the building where his past lay in a hospital bed, then at his daughter, who represented possible redemption, and finally at Olivia, who offered a future he hadn't expected. The price of revenge was my humanity, he said quietly. The price of forgiveness is just money. Seems like a fair trade. Tiffany hugged him suddenly, fiercely. I love you, Dad. I'm sorry it took me so long to be worthy of being your daughter. Love isn't about worth, he replied, the words coming from some newly discovered well of wisdom. It's about choice. We all choose who we become, moment by moment. As they drove home, Olivia rested her hand on his arm. You know, when I first met you, I saw someone seeking redemption. Now I see someone who's found it. Walter smiled, feeling lighter than he had in months. The weight of perfect revenge had been replaced by the buoyancy of imperfect forgiveness. It wasn't the ending he'd planned, but maybe that was the point. Life's most meaningful moments rarely followed a script. His phone buzzed one final time, a text from Brenda. Thank you. I don't deserve it, but thank you. He didn't respond. Some things didn't need words. Some debts couldn't be acknowledged. Some forgiveness worked best in silence. Walter drove toward home, toward a future he hadn't calculated or planned. For once, that felt exactly right. Epilogue. 10 years later. The community center's annual fundraising gala had grown significantly over the past decade. What started as a modest local event now filled the grand ballroom of the city's finest hotel, drawing hundreds of supporters and raising millions for youth programs across the state. Walter Matthews, now 60, adjusted his bow tie as he prepared to deliver the opening speech. His hair had gone completely silver, but his eyes retained their sharp intelligence, now softened by years of purpose-driven work. Ready? Olivia asked, appearing beside him. After 8 years of marriage, she still had the ability to ground him with a single word. Her practical business attire had been replaced by an elegant evening gown, but her essence remained unchanged, focused, compassionate, and unfailingly direct. Almost. Walter reviewed his notes one final time. Have you seen Tiffany? She's supposed to present the expansion proposal. She's in the back, going over numbers with the board. You know how thorough she is with the financial projections. Walter smiled with pride. His daughter had transformed her perfectionist tendencies into something constructive. As the center's executive director, she'd expanded their programs across 3 states, helping thousands of at-risk youth find stability and purpose. The lights dimmed, signaling the start of the program. Walter took his place at the podium, surveying the crowd. 10 years ago, he couldn't have imagined this scene. Hundreds of people gathered not for social status or appearance, but for genuine change. "Good evening," he began. "When I first walked into this organization a decade ago, I was a different man. I thought I understood power, success, and justice. I was wrong." From her seat in the front row, Olivia nodded encouragingly. Their relationship had begun during his journey from revenge to redemption, and she'd been his compass ever since. Today, we're not just celebrating another successful year. We're celebrating transformation, the kind that happens when we choose to build instead of destroy, to lift up instead of tear down. His eyes found Tiffany in the crowd. She sat with her husband, Mark, a fellow social worker she'd met through the program 5 years ago. Their 2-year-old daughter, Hope, was home with a sitter. The irony wasn't lost on Walter. His daughter, who once demanded a $1 million wedding, now found joy in simple family dinners and meaningful work. Our expanded youth mentorship program has shown us that change is possible at any age, that no one is defined by their past choices, that redemption isn't earned through grand gestures, but through daily decisions to be better than we were yesterday. In the middle of the room sat Marcus, Walter's brother. The cynical divorce lawyer had initially scoffed at Walter's involvement with the center, calling it naive idealism. Now his firm provided pro bono legal services to the center's clients, and Marcus had discovered that helping families stay together was more satisfying than profiting from their dissolution. 10 years ago, I thought I understood justice. I confused it with revenge, with the perfect execution of carefully planned destruction. But true justice, I've learned, is about restoration, about creating opportunities for change. As he spoke, Walter remembered the path that led here. The betrayal, the calculated revenge, the hollow victory. Then the slow, challenging work of rebuilding, not just others' lives, but his own humanity. His thoughts turned to Brenda. The experimental treatment had extended her life by 7 years, giving her time to reconnect with Tiffany and find her own path to redemption. She'd spent her final years volunteering at a women's shelter, counseling others about financial independence and self-worth. When she passed 3 years ago, the shelter created a program in her name, helping women escape manipulative relationships. Richard had served 8 years in federal prison for his fraud schemes. Upon release, he'd attempted to restart his old cons, but found his reputation thoroughly destroyed. Last Walter heard, he was working as a dishwasher in a small-town diner, writing a memoir about the price of deception. Our newest initiative, Walter continued, focuses on financial literacy and emotional intelligence. We're teaching young people that true wealth isn't measured in dollars or status, but in the lives we touch and the changes we inspire. The program had emerged from his own experience, combining his financial expertise with hard-learned lessons about the relationship between money, power, and self-worth. It had already helped dozens of families avoid the traps of materialism and entitled thinking that had destroyed his first marriage. Tiffany took the stage next, presenting the center's expansion plans. Her presentation style reminded Walter of himself, detail-oriented, strategic, focused on long-term impact. But where he had once used these skills for revenge, she wielded them for reconstruction. Our 3-year projection shows we can reach an additional 1,000 youth annually, she explained, clicking through professional slides. The return on investment isn't just financial, though our programs do reduce public costs through lower rates of addiction, crime, and dependency. The real return is in transformed lives. Walter watched his daughter with a mixture of pride and amazement. The entitled princess who had once demanded a luxury wedding now lived in a modest home, drove a practical car, and poured her energy into helping others. Her own daughter was being raised with values that emphasize character over consumption. After the presentations, During the dinner portion of the evening, Walter found himself seated with some of the center's success stories. Maria, a former gang member who now ran her own legitimate business. Jason, who had overcome addiction and became a counselor. Sarah, whose abusive relationship had led her to their doors, now helping other women find their strength. Mr. Matthews, Maria said, "I've been meaning to tell you. I'm using your financial literacy program in my business now, teaching my employees about building real wealth, not just chasing money." "That's wonderful," Walter replied, genuinely pleased. What's been the response? They're getting it. One guy even turned down a higher-paying job with a shady company because he recognized the red flags we discussed in the program. Olivia joined their conversation, adding her perspective as both a social worker and Walter's wife. The real change happens when people understand their own worth isn't tied to material success. Speaking of which, Jason interjected, "Did you hear about Richard Spencer?" Walter raised an eyebrow. The memoir failed miserably. Publishers said it read like another con job. But here's the interesting part. He's actually doing okay as a dishwasher. Found some kind of peace in honest work, according to my cousin who lives in that town. The irony wasn't lost on Walter. Richard, who had built his life on sophistication and deception, finding redemption in simple, honest labor. It mirrored Walter's own journey from complex revenge to straightforward purpose. Later that evening, as the event wound down, Walter found himself in the hotel's garden with Olivia and Tiffany. The night air was cool, the garden's fountains providing a peaceful backdrop for reflection. 10 years, Tiffany mused, sipping her sparkling water. Sometimes I can hardly recognize that spoiled brat who cared more about wedding centerpieces than people. You've come a long way, Olivia acknowledged. We all have. I think about Mom sometimes, Tiffany continued. Those last few years, when she was working at the shelter, she finally found her real strength. Walter nodded. Brenda's transformation had been perhaps the most unexpected outcome of his revenge plot. The humbling consequences of their actions had led both mother and daughter to discover authentic purpose. She would have loved Hope, Tiffany said softly. Not the way she would have 10 years ago, with expensive gifts and superficial attention, but really loved her for who she is. She got to see you become who you really are, Walter replied. That was her greatest gift. Mark joined them, carrying sleeping Hope who had been brought to say good night to her grandparents. The toddler's peaceful face reminded Walter of Tiffany at that age, before material desires and social pressures had corrupted their family's values. The board approved all our proposals, Mark announced quietly, mindful of his sleeping daughter. Full funding for the expansion, plus seed money for 3 new programs. Tiffany's face lit up with genuine joy, not the artificial excitement she once showed over labels, but real satisfaction in meaningful achievement. We should celebrate, Olivia suggested. Dinner at our place tomorrow? Nothing fancy, just family. The phrase, nothing fancy, just family would have been an insult to their old selves. Now it represented everything they valued most. As they prepared to leave, Walter received one final update from the center staff. Their youth mentorship program had just received national recognition for its innovative approach to breaking cycles of materialism and entitlement. The irony, he murmured to Olivia as they drove home, that my perfect revenge led to such imperfect but meaningful redemption. Life rarely follows our carefully laid plans, she replied wisely. That's what makes it authentic. At home, Walter spent a few minutes in his study before bed. The room had changed over the years. Gone were the files documenting Brenda's betrayal and Richard's schemes, replaced by program proposals and success stories from the center. One photo remained from his old life, a family picture from when Tiffany was young, before status and appearances had corrupted their relationships. He kept it not as a reminder of what he'd lost, but of how far they'd all come. His phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Dinner next week? Have a new idea for expanding the legal aid program. Walter smiled, remembering his brother's initial skepticism about his work with the center. Marcus had been right about many things during the divorce and revenge period, but wonderfully wrong about the possibility of genuine change. Another text arrived, this one from Tiffany. Thank you, Dad. Not just for tonight, but for showing me what real success looks like. As Walter prepared for bed, he reflected on the decade's journey. His revenge had been perfect, carefully planned, flawlessly executed, completely devastating. But the aftermath had taught him that perfection wasn't the same as righteousness, that winning wasn't the same as succeeding. Olivia was already asleep, her reading glasses perched on the nightstand next to a stack of case files. She had taught him that strength wasn't about power over others, but about the power to lift others up. Their shared work at the center had given him something his revenge never could: the satisfaction of creating rather than destroying, of building rather than demolishing. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, more lives to help rebuild, more youth to guide toward better choices, more opportunities to choose restoration over retribution. But for now, Walter Matthews, once the master of perfect revenge, slept peacefully, content in the knowledge that life's most meaningful victories often came from letting go of perfection and embracing the messy, complicated work of genuine transformation. His last thought before drifting off was of Hope, his granddaughter, growing up in a world where success was measured not by material wealth or social status, but by the lives one touched and the positive changes one inspired. It wasn't the legacy he had once imagined for himself, but it was infinitely more valuable than any revenge could have been. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen, and I'll see you there.